Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over your next winter storm, which is going to be taking a very similar storm track to this current system. We're going to be timing this one out for you guys, giving you details on what you could be expecting. This one looks like it could have more of an impact for some of the areas further south, especially in parts of the coastal northeast and the mid-Atlantic. Looks like you guys could now get in on maybe a few quick inches of snowfall before you transition to ice or rain. We're going to be timing it out for you guys and give you a general idea of what you should expect. We're going to be continuing to cover this system because it does look like this will be our next big winter storm, and we're also going to be talking about what's currently ongoing with the current winter storm, which is stretching from Texas all the way up to Maine, with some winter storm warnings already in place. So we definitely have an interesting storm setup, an interesting pattern in place with so much cold air over the central U.S. that's bringing these storms very, very far to the south. So here's what the current National Weather Service page looks like. We have some winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings back through the Rockies and the Northwest. That's actually from the system that we're going to be talking about in today's video. We also see the much larger area of winter storm warnings, which stretch from the Mexican border all the way up to the Canadian border there, and that's the first time that's happened in quite a while. We also have some wind chill warnings in effect that stretch also from the Canadian border all the way down to the Mexican border, and those are in kind of the darker blue, and on either side of the wind chill warnings we have some wind chill advisories where you're not dealing with as extreme wind chills, but still they will be very, very cold. We also have some ice storm warnings in effect for parts of Mississippi and Alabama, as well as Kentucky, Ohio, and West Virginia, and then another area for parts of Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and upstate New York. We also have some winter weather advisories back through the Northeast and parts of the Great Lakes, where we are dealing with mainly freezing rain concerns in the Northeast, and on the back end of the system you might see a couple of inches of snowfall in the lower Great Lakes. Now we also have some hard freeze warnings in effect for parts of Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama there. And other than that, that pretty much wraps it up for the watches and warnings currently. This is one of the most active watches and warnings pages that I've seen in quite a while, and I think that we will see in quite a while. We have that cold air that's pushing in from Canada. We also have that big storm system coming out of the south and coming further to the north. So that's going to allow so many watches and warnings to be posted over such a large area. Your records yesterday were tied between three areas for your high temperature. 90 degrees in all of those areas. Palm Beach Gardens, Florida, they got to 90 degrees. Titusville, Florida, they got to 90 degrees as well. And Brighton, Florida, they got to 90 degrees. Now, I'm probably going to not say this name correctly, but Cabeto, Minnesota, got to negative 45 degrees Fahrenheit. Sorry if I didn't pronounce it right. It's a very, very hard name to say. And also the highest rainfall report yesterday, 3 miles northeast of Port St. John, Florida. They got 2.49 inches of rain yesterday. And this snowfall report was taking over the past about 2.5 days, but this is the highest snowfall report that was posted yesterday. And it was 3 miles northwest of Sugarloaf Camp, Wyoming. They got 50 inches, but again, that is spread out over 2.5 days. So it really doesn't count for the single day daily record, but I included it anyway because it is such a large number, 50 inches of snowfall, and it was backed up by many numerous reports around the area of 40 plus inches of snowfall. Now, here's what that system currently looks like on radar, and if you do remember yesterday, I did say that as this is heading out of the Gulf of Mexico, right before it heads out of the Gulf of Mexico, and right now the low pressure is right here, it is going to be at its strongest point. It's going to have the most energy because it's still over the water, and it still has enough cold air that's allowing it to produce some of that heavier snowfall. And I did highlight this area right here to see some of that heavier snowfall, and I said some of these areas could see 6+ inches if that were to happen, and yes, it did actually happen. We do have some of that heavier snow back through Arkansas and northern Mississippi, and we also have some sleet and freezing rain in some of that purple and pink colors right there, and even some heavier rains in the greens and yellows and oranges and reds. This is our main system that's going to be heading to the north, but we also have a more minor system that's moving further to the north out ahead of this, so that's why you're dealing with some snow showers through the Ohio Valley, the Great Lakes, into the northeast. That's also developing some freezing rain ahead of the system out for some of these areas for parts of the northeast as well. So do watch out if you are going to be traveling early this morning into even the evening commute. You could see some slick roadways on your way back home. Now, here's what the current European model is showing, and we're going to be timing out this system for you guys. So we're not going to be actually talking too much about this system, because that's a system that's going through today. That's going to be heading to the north, and I already had my forecast for this one. So if you want to see my forecast for that, that's the most recent video on my channel. But what we're going to be talking about is this one back through the northwest. Now, we have a bunch of rain and snow, depending on your elevation, back through into the Pacific Northwest, and we also have a big polar vortex that's oriented over the northern plains. Now, something that's different with this, even though we're going to have a very similar track to what's happening with this current storm right here, is that we have this cold air centered a little bit further to the east. If you remember, when this system actually started, the core of the cold air was centered over the Dakotas. If you look now, the core of the cold air is actually centered over Minnesota, Iowa, Nebraska, and that area. So this is going to continue to head a little bit further to the east. It's not going to move too much further to the east, but this tiny shift is enough, because now we have that cold air centered a little bit further to the east. We also have another high pressure trying to form up further to the north, so that's going to allow more cold air to press in. And the biggest difference now is that it looks like parts of the northeast and mid-Atlantic, the coastal northeast and mid-Atlantic, could get in on a quick few inches of snowfall before it switches over to ice or rain. And that's going to be the biggest story with this event, is that potential for a few inches for those areas. And those same areas from Oklahoma and Texas up through the Ohio Valley and into the interior northeast are also going to get hit with another round of a few to maybe even several inches of snowfall. We don't have your snowfall forecast for the storm just yet, because it is still a while out, but in the next couple of days, as we get closer to the event, we will have your snowfall forecast out. So here to be by tomorrow morning, we're dealing with that system that's over the eastern United States, pulling away further to the north, and then your main system that we're going to be talking about in today's video, heading further south, now into the central and southern Rockies, and then that's going to dip into the plains. Look at where your polar vortex is oriented. You have a very broad high pressure that's centered over the Ohio Valley, and because we have this high pressure, even though it is going to retreat a little bit further to the north, we still do have enough cold air on the surface in the lower parts of the atmosphere that you could start off as a little bit of snow for some of these areas right here. So as we continue this forward, you're going to see that through Wednesday into Wednesday night and Thursday morning, it's starting to head further to the north. Now, this is, again, a very similar track, actually a very similar setup, except it's a little bit further to the south. The entire storm is pushed a little bit further to the south. So these areas right here might miss out on a little bit more snowfall than with the other systems, although they'll still most likely get a couple inches or maybe even a few inches of snowfall. So this is by Thursday morning. You can tell there's a big difference already, because it's snowing in northern Virginia, Maryland, and into Pennsylvania by this point, and then it's going to continue to snow. Here to be by Thursday in the early afternoon. It's switching over to ice and sleet and kind of a mix for a lot of those areas, but it's snowing now for parts of Pennsylvania, northern Virginia, still New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island. So it's snowing over those areas, still lightly snowing over anywhere in the Ohio Valley, the western Tennessee Valley, and then back through the lower Mississippi River Valley, where you're dealing with some of that snow still back through even as far south as central Louisiana there. And then as we shift this and kind of zoom in on the eastern United States, you can see that area of ice setting up with fairly heavy ice rates and then heavier snow further to the north. So now much of New England, especially southern and central New England, is getting in on the snow by Thursday morning. Here's by Friday in the morning, and we're still dealing with more of that snow. Now we're going to want to watch how close does this primary low pressure get to the coast, because if it tracks like what it's showing on this model, where it tracks kind of like this, then you are going to see a switch over to some rain. If we see kind of what some of the other models overnight were showing, where kind of somewhat like the Canadian, where it had a much more flatter look, where it kind of just went out to sea like this, then those areas might actually stick in as a little bit more of an ice or all snow event. So we are going to have to watch out for the potential of a track shift within the models, and we're going to have to continue to monitor this very, very closely, because narrow shifts in the track will have a big impact on especially this area, on how much snowfall they see, and that's going to be something that I am going to be keeping a close eye on. We're dealing with heavy snow back through upstate New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine by this point, and now the northern half of Maine gets in on the snow, as well as northern New Hampshire and northern Vermont. Now this is a very good low pressure placement if you do like snow for these areas right here. It's close enough to the coast, but not too close to the coast where it's going to be rain. So this is a very good low pressure placement if you do like snow and you live in the interior northeast. This is where you get some of the heavier bands of snow. and then that shifts out further to the east and moves up through Nova Scotia, and then it goes into Newfoundland and Labrador. So here's what the European model is showing for snowfall. Now, we do have to caution you that this is including both systems. So all of this snow back through here is from this first system, but all of the snow back through here is added on to what you've already seen. So all of the snow through the interior northeast, the Ohio Valley, and into the Mississippi River Valley, that's all from this, that's combined of both of these systems. The snow over the coastal northeast and the mid-Atlantic, that's all new snowfall. So you can see that we added a couple more inches, a few inches, maybe 6 inches or more in some areas for the interior northeast back through the Ohio Valley. Some of those areas did get some additional snowfall, and then you get another 4 to 6 inches or more in parts of the mid-Atlantic and in the northeast, if that were to be correct. Now here's what the this is what the European shows. Here's what the GFS shows, and it's actually fairly similar. It actually shows a lot more snowfall for the Ohio Valley on the second storm, and the storm that we're talking about in today's video. It shows a lot more snow for some of these areas, and again, these are combined totals, but still, this is how much snowfall you're expecting over the next about 5 days. And some of these models are showing upwards of 10 to 15 inches of snowfall, if that were to be correct. And then you can see, of course, the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast also getting in on their fair share of snowfall on the GFS model at least. Now let's look at another model, the Canadian model. Now the Canadian model does shift this a little bit further to the west, but with the secondary storm, it shifts the first storm a little bit further to the north and to the west. But on the secondary storm, it takes more of a southern track and more of a flatter track. So now you're seeing more of that snow back through here, and then it does recurve to the north, and you get some additional snow back through New England, but it's not as much snowfall as what the other models were showing. That's what I was talking about, where if you get more of a flatter system that doesn't have as much energy with it, and it just goes off the shore, you might see more of a mostly snow event or a mostly mixed event instead of a rain event at the end of this event. So here would be what the Weather Prediction Center is showing for snowfall over the next from Wednesday to Thursday, and this is how much snowfall they're expecting. So this does not go through the entire event. The event would really finish by Friday afternoon and evening. So it does not include anything that happened back through the Northeast or the Ohio Valley. That has not been rendered in from the Weather Prediction Center just yet. But you can see in the lightest green, that's 1 to 2 inches, 2 to 4 inches. In the medium shade of green, dark green is 4 to 6 inches. In the dark blue, that's 6 to 8 inches, 8 to 10 inches in the lighter blue. So you can see a good pocket of 6+ inches back through Arkansas, and then you're seeing a general 2 to 4 inches plus for much of the Tennessee Valley, especially as you get west of Nashville. There is where you're dealing with more of the heavier areas of snow. And then here's your chance of from Wednesday to Thursday of freezing rain accumulation, or this is how much freezing rain they're expecting out of this event, and they're looking at over a quarter of an inch, even up to half an inch of snow of ice over some of these areas in Louisiana, Texas, Arkansas, and even into Mississippi. These are some of the same areas that are getting heavier snow today and into tomorrow, as well as some ice and sleet. So you guys really don't need any of this extra ice or snow. You already got your fair share, but unfortunately you are going to get piled on with more of that ice. And again, ice really isn't that fun. It's really something that can cause a lot of issues, and it's also very, very hard to deal with. Now, here's your chances of seeing about 2 to 3 inches or more of snow on Thursday into Friday morning. They rarely do put out a 90% plus. Usually they restrict that to the Rockies. Sometimes in the higher elevations of the Rockies, they'll put a 90% plus in those reds, but they rarely do that in the eastern United States and anywhere in the eastern United States. Basically from the Rockies eastward, they rarely will put out a 90% plus area, and they do have that. So they're very confident that you'll see at least 2 to 3 inches in these areas. They rarely put out such a large area of 70 to 90%, and in fact, they rarely put out any area of 70 to 90% chance. Usually, they'd like to stay up to that 50 to 70% chance. So the fact that they have such a large area of 70 to 90% chance shows that they have great confidence that they'll at least see 2 to 3 inches in some of these areas. And then here's that 50% line. This is usually the line where you can say, okay, they're fairly confident that you're going to get 2 to 3 inches within this area, and that encompasses much of the Northeast. Now, this is only for Thursday into Friday, and now if we shift this over to Friday into Saturday, this includes much of the northern New England area, the interior Northeast. This is when they get in on the heavier snowfall. So you can see that batch of 70 to 90% chance back through into southeastern Canada as well as into Maine, and then you can see much of the northern and central part of Maine under that 50 to 70% chance. In areas further to the south, 10 to 30 or 30 to 50% chance of seeing 2 to 3 inches of snowfall. So that is going to wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.